Welcome everyone to our Topic Tuesday webinar today. We are excited that you're joining us as you're coming in and connecting to audio. We are going to be going over updates in preparation for the opening of the financial aid application season on October the 1st. So we've got some great updates for everyone to hear about, both federally and for Mississippi. So we're excited that you're joining us. Just a reminder, we are in webinar mode. So while we see that you're here, we cannot see or talk to you like we would love to, but there are abilities to still engage with us, which we would love for you to do. During the presentation, please feel free to utilize that chat feature you see at the bottom. That will communicate directly with the panelists that we have today. And if you see the Q&A, if you'll put your questions in there, the panelists and hosts will be monitoring that throughout, and we'll either answer it live or type an answer to you. So those are the two features that we want to make sure and bring to your attention during today's webinar. As you're joining us and as our colleagues are connecting their audio, we've got a fun poll question that we want to test your knowledge around. The poll that is going to launch is: Mississippi is one of only how many states that has the option to link your state aid application from the FAFSA? So you will see that poll question popping up in front of your screen. Let's test some knowledge here. Mississippi is one of how many states that has the option to link your state aid application directly from the FAFSA confirmation page? So if you're just logging in, we are in webinar mode. So we're excited that you're joining us today for some updates on the FAFSA and Mississippi aid application, the MAAPP. We will get started in just 1 second. We want to give everyone some time to log in, get your audio set up, and we've got a fun poll question. All right, about 5 more seconds on that poll question, and then we will see what those results are. See how everybody did. All right, let us end the poll and share those results out. All right, so the vast majority, we kind of got actually we're pretty close across the board there. People top two thinking 20 or 5, with some in the 9 and 34. So it's actually 5. We're one of 5 states that you can link directly over. Jennifer Rogers is one of our speakers. She's done a lot of great work to make that easily accessible. And so look at Mississippi being able to be easily accessible there and linking over. So just know if you work in another state, or if you hear someone working in another state, they don't have that accessibility to link directly over and make it easier on the students or practitioners that are doing that. All right, Shannon, I'll hand it back over to you.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Shannon Grimsley, the Director of Outreach Programs for the Woodward Hines Education Foundation and the Get to College program. We are recording today's session and will send a link to anyone who is registered. For those watching the recording, today's date is September 6, 2022, and the material in this webinar is current through the 22-23 school year. In today's session, 23-24 FAFSA and MAAPP updates, you will hear from Kirsten Dufour of Get to College with the FAFSA updates, and Jennifer Rogers from the Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid with updates on the MAAPP application. I will now share a little background on Get to College and a few logistics about the webinar before we get started. Get to College is a nonprofit program of the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. We have 3 centers in Mississippi, one in Jackson, Ocean Springs, and South Haven, and we help parents, students, and high school counselors with all aspects of the college planning and financial aid process, and all of our services are free. In our centers, we offer personalized college counseling appointments where we can tell students when to apply for admission and scholarships, help fill out their FAFSA, and advise on essay writing and interviewing. As we mentioned earlier, during the webinar, we cannot see or hear you, but again, we do ask that you ask us questions through the instant message, or chat at any time. I will be monitoring the Q&A today, and we will have time for live Q&A with the presenters at the end. I would now like to introduce our guest speakers for the day. Jennifer Rogers is the Director of the Mississippi Office of Student Financial Aid. In that role, she oversees an administration of $50 million budget and an all state-supported student financial aid programs. Since Rogers took the leadership of the office in 2009, the office has reduced its administrative overhead while increasing the number of students eligible for the state's only need-based grant program by nearly 1,200%. Rogers received her undergraduate degree from the University of the South, Sewanee in Tennessee, and her MBA from Millsaps College in Jackson. She recently completed her doctoral degree at the University of Mississippi. Kirsten Dufour is the Assistant Director and Project Manager for Get to College. She has led the Foundation's FAFSA scaling efforts and created the training and professional development programming for Mississippi educators to support college access for Mississippi students. She partnered in the creation of the curriculum, student workbook materials, and master teacher of CCR course for the support of the graduation requirement, college and career readiness in the high school classrooms. Currently, she serves on the National College Attainment Network's FAFSA Expert Advisory Board and is published in the Foundation Review for her FAFSA scaling work. So Jennifer and Kirsten, I'm going to turn this over to you. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer first, actually, and we're going to talk about the MAAPP application first.
Great, thank you. Shannon, it says I'm muted on mine.
I think you're good now.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Shannon, for the introduction. As Shannon said, I'm Jennifer Rogers, and we're the Office of Student Financial Aid, and we are the office that is responsible for helping disperse all of the funds that the state makes available for students to go to college. And so I don't ever want to take for granted that everyone knows the basics. So if Shannon, if we can move to the next slide. I want to start by giving you all an overview of the three main grant programs available to students from the state of Mississippi to help pay for college. And of course, if you ever need or want more information on any of these programs, you may always visit our website. The address is there in orange below at www.msfinancialaid.org. Kirsten, Shannon, and all of our colleagues at Get to College are also an excellent resource and can often answer most of your questions about state aid and are certainly available to you as well. The Higher Education Legislative Plan Grant is the primary need-based aid program for students. Students must be at least partially Pell eligible, and they also have to meet some other income requirements. Students need at least a 20 on the ACT, that can be a super score. They need to have a 2.5 high school GPA, and they need to take the HELP core curriculum. Now, the HELP core curriculum, we'll talk about a little bit more about it later, but it is the exact same as the IHL required college prep curriculum. And the great thing about the HELP grant is that it awards a full tuition award to students at public institutions and a similar amount at our state's private institutions as what they would get at a four-year public university. The Mississippi Tuition Grant is probably the one that most people are aware of. It is the primary I call it a residency grant. It's students have to be residents of Mississippi. They cannot be eligible for a maximum federal Pell Grant, which is a little different. There is no need, actually it's need exclusive. Students must have at least a 15 on the ACT if they're coming right out of high school and a 2.5 high school GPA. The award is $500 a year for freshmen and sophomores, so that's $250 a semester, and $1,000 a year for juniors and seniors. And finally, the Mississippi Eminent Scholars Grant is the state's primary merit-based grant. Students need a 29 on the ACT. Again, that can be a super score, and a 3.5 high school GPA. And the grant awards $2,500 per year, and that's regardless of institution. One other thing, you're fine here to stay here, Shannon, but one other thing is that students need to enroll in and complete 15 credit hours to keep state aid. So just bear that in mind. Make sure, if you have an opportunity to share that with students, just know that in order to keep receiving aid once they are in college, they need to take and complete 15 hours. All right, so how do students apply for state aid? Every year, the Mississippi Aid application, which we call the MAAPP, opens on October 1st. This is the same day that the FAFSA opens, which is the federal aid application. This is a look at the first page of the state aid application. It really is a very simple application. It takes just a few minutes to complete. Unlike the FAFSA that Kirsten's going to be talking about in much greater detail in a little while, the MAAPP does not require any financial information. It is primarily just an opportunity for us to find out what the students' college plans are, what their major is going to be, and to get just a little bit of household information from them, so that we know what state programs they are eligible for. We do encourage that you complete, we do ask that you encourage all of your high school students to complete both the MAAPP and the FAFSA. And the easiest way to do it is to do the FAFSA first, and then to link to the MAAPP using the link on the confirmation page. Shannon was, the poll question earlier asked, about how many states have that link available, and that we're one of a handful of states that have that, and so you can link directly from the MAAPP, from the FAFSA to the MAAPP on the confirmation page at the end of the FAFSA. So we encourage you to encourage your students to do that. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so the MAAPP is not just an application. It is much more than that. It is also a student information system where students can log in and see everything they need to know about their state aid application and their state aid awards. It is also a place where authorized high school counselors and teachers can log in and see everything they need to be able to advise students on about state aid. We refer to all of these kind of back end aspects of MAAPP as the MAAPP dashboard. And so I'm going to spend the next few minutes kind of showing you around MAAPP. We can go to the next slide. This is a screenshot of the main page of the state aid website at www.msfinancialaid.org. Where you can find lots of other information, but on the home screen, you'll see a green button that says MAAPP dashboard, log in or request an account. So if you want to go straight to your dashboard, you would log in there. And that will bring you to this login page where if you have an account, you can go ahead and log into MAAPP with your username and password. Or if you forgot your username and password, there are, within that red circle there are a couple of options to help you get back on track and get you logged in again. Or if you don't have an account, you can request an account using the blue button at the bottom. Once you are logged in, you will see your MAAPP dashboard. And so for the purposes of this presentation, I'm logged in as a counselor at a fictitious high school called Hospitality State High School. And but you can see here that, and we don't have a very large student population. You can see here that your MAAPP dashboard is going to show you a number of different metrics, such as how many of your students have completed their FAFSA, how many of your students have completed their MAAPP, how many are missing documents, such as maybe the help curriculum certification. You can also see some other things at the end of each age year. So like right now, if you were to log in to your MAAPP dashboard from last year, because the new aid application hasn't started yet, you would actually be able to see how many awards we have made to your students by program and by total amount of money, which can be a cool thing. Unfortunately, it's probably not that information probably will not be available to you as early as you would like it in the year to be able to use it at awards days. But it is there nonetheless to share and to know how your students are doing in terms of state aid accessibility. One other note on this page, periodically we will display messages for counselors, and those will usually appear up at the top, right above where it says dashboard, in red writing. You won't be able to miss them if we're trying to make them noticeable to you. We can go on to the next slide. If you click in on students over on the left-hand panel, you will see a list of all of your students. And this list will include any student that either has a state aid application on file or a FAFSA for the selected aid year. So now if you click on a student, let's, we're gonna click on, I think we're gonna click on Johnny on the spot and go to, oh, no, we did a different one. All right, so this is Jane Doe. She is, and this here, you can see almost exactly what a student would see if they were to log into their dashboard. Lots of tabs here at the top. You can see the milestones. All we know is that she submitted her MAAPP. She hasn't really done anything else that she needs to do. At the time that I took this screenshot, she did not have any missing documents. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. If while you're in the student information section and you're looking at the student detail panel and you click on high school, you can actually submit information for Jane as her high school counselor. So if you click on this button that says update student information on the screen, on the screenshot on the left, then that will take you to a screen that looks like the one on the right that has several boxes that you can fill in and submit information on behalf of the student. So if you know that maybe the state aid office doesn't have the highest ACT score on file, you can go in and enter that score for us and send it, and that way we'll have that information. Let's go on. You can also generate reports, which you can filter and sort in a number of different ways. So you can use all of the drop-down menus and date menus at the top of this screen to kind of filter what information you would like to see a report on. You can select the age year, and then you can actually use this, the blue button near the top of the screen, to export that report into an Excel file that you can manipulate further if you choose to. One thing I want to note about this page is that we do our very, very best to match our data with your data. But sometimes this just isn't possible. And usually it's because students do not always use the same name on applications, or maybe they transpose two numbers of their social security number, or a parent submits it and they forget that they're putting in their child's birthday instead of their own birthday. There are so many things that can happen. But if the student list, if you get in here and you're pulling up your list of students and you see that something is just definitely not right, data matching may be the cause of that, and you are always welcome to contact our office and see if we can't help you get the list in a little bit better shape, or you know, a list that looks more like what you are expecting to see. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. Because there is so much information available through MAAPP, the security does need to be pretty tight. So before counselors or teachers can have access to MAAPP, the district, the public school district or the private school, if you're at a private school, must have an active participation agreement on file with our office. And in addition to the participation agreement, each counselor or teacher who accesses MAAPP must have been authorized to do so. So this agreement has to be completed annually by either the district superintendent or by the private school headmaster. So last Thursday on September 1st, emails went out to all district superintendents and private school headmasters that have a MAAPP account, or at least that had one last year. And the email included instructions for renewing the participation agreement online and for authorizing or reauthorizing counselors and teachers. This process happens every year at the beginning of the year. So counselors and teachers, once your superintendent or headmaster renews your annual participation agreement and authorizes you or reauthorizes you, you will also be required to sign your annual certification statement the first time you log in after the annual participation agreement is signed. So all authorized high school administrators, users will continue to be able to access MAAPP using last year's participation agreement and certification process. But come October 1st, all access to MAAPP will be denied unless the new participation agreement has been signed. So encourage your superintendent or headmasters to complete the renewal process quickly. It really only takes a few minutes. If your district or private school has a new superintendent or a new headmaster this year, please contact our office, let us know about it, and we will work with the school or the district to get the new administrator set up. And don't worry, of course, you will not just, if y'all miss that 1 month window to get all of this handled, it is not the end of the world. We will get you set up, and as soon as all of that certification and authorization process is completed, you will once again have access to MAAPP. Brandon Johnson is the contact in our office for you if there are any issues surrounding this. And I'll put his number there, his email address there, and I'm going to give you more, I'm going to give you a reminder of that at the end of my section of the presentation as well. So one of the most important things that we ask for counselors at every single high school across the state, both public and private, is to submit the academic information of every graduating high school senior as early as possible in the spring semester. The information can be submitted as a file, which we refer to as the high school grade file, or if maybe you're at a small school and you only have a handful of graduating seniors, it may be easier to just submit information for students individually through MAAPP, and you can do that on that edit high school information page that I showed you earlier in the presentation. I'm reminding you about this now at the beginning of the year, but just know that we really can't accept any of this data submission until January. So we encourage you to get the requested information to us in January or February. April is okay too, but we encourage you not to wait for the April 30th help deadline, because your students will probably be driving you up the wall to get that information to us by that point. And also we know how chaotic and hectic the end of the year can get as well. So regardless of how you choose to submit the information, either through the grade file or through MAAPP, we need the 7-semester GPA, the ACT score or super score, and we need the help curriculum certification. And so on this next slide, I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about the help curriculum certification. And I apologize that that was supposed to be orange, the web links. All state aid applicants are automatically considered for the help grant. So when you submit your high school information, we ask that you please submit help curriculum certification for all graduating seniors, not just those that you think might be help eligible. And when you certify the help curriculum, you are only certifying that the student either has or has not completed the help curriculum. That's all you're telling us. Yes, they've taken the curriculum. No, they've not taken the curriculum. You are not certifying that the student is overall eligible for help and meets all the other criteria. That we will make that determination, so that does not fall on you. All we need from you is just the curriculum information. The HELP core curriculum is exactly the same as the IHL required CPC. No additional courses, electives, anything. They are exactly the same. And also, I wanted to just point out, some of you may not have heard yet, but the IHL required CPC actually changed for this fall. The social studies requirement was reduced from 3.5 credits down to just 3. So students only need 3 social studies credits, not 3.5, to meet the required CPC. Once again, if you have any questions about any of the things that we ask of our counselors, you are always welcome to contact us. You can visit our counselor center online, and there's a link there to that. Or you can contact Brandon Johnson in our office at bjohnson@mississippi.edu. And then one last thing, I want to tell you about a brand new program that was just created by the Mississippi legislature. It's called the State Representative Bill Kincaid Fostering Access and Inspiring True Hope Scholarship. And of course, that is quite a mouthful. So we are going to call this simply by its acronym, which is the FAITH Scholarship. Statistics show that 75% of all students in foster care or state custody arrangements will become a single parent or enter the correction system by 25. 75%. That is just a terrible statistic. And so this program is designed to change that statistic by offering students that at no fault of their own end up in these situations another path. And so the program will provide up to full cost of attendance scholarships to students who meet certain eligibility requirements. They have to be U.S. citizens and Mississippi residents. They have to be under the age of 25 when they first apply for, or when they first begin their academic program. They need to file the FAFSA, and any other federal applications. There is an application for an education tuition voucher called an ETV voucher that some of these students may be eligible for, and we would ask that those who are would submit that application. And then they just need to meet one of the following criteria, and that is that they are in legal custody at CPS, that's Child Protection Services, at any time since the age of 13. So that could maybe even only be a day. In some instances, they have to have lived in a qualified residential facility at any time since age 13, or they were adopted from either Child Protection Services or a qualified residential facility at any time after age 13. So if they meet just one of those criteria, they would be considered eligible. And then, of course, they would need to enroll in a Mississippi institution for any type of undergraduate credential or degree. And they would need to enroll at least half time, so at least 6 hours, credit hours per term. Like I said, the award is up to the full cost of attendance. This award will be applied last. So it would come after and be stackable with any other federal aid, state aid, institutional aid. But of course, students would not be required to take out any loans. So they would, the idea is that these students would have no debt. There is no work requirement. So these students would not necessarily be required to take advantage of work study or actual, work outside of the institution to be able to participate. For students who are living on campus, we know that housing, especially over breaks, can sometimes be an issue. And so the award will provide additional funding for campus housing during breaks where that housing is available. The application, of course, opens October 1st. It's the same application that students would complete to do just to apply for any other state aid. And there is no deadline. So students can apply anytime that the application is open, and it will be open from October 1st, 2022 through September 15th of next year. And even if they do not get, they can get supporting documents to us at any time, although there should be very, very few reporting documents. And we will begin making awards on the scholarship for the 23-24 academic year. That is all I have to share. Again, here's the contact information for Brandon Johnson in our office. He is your go-to person, and anyone who's ever talked to him knows that he is super helpful and patient and kind and very, very helpful. And then our toll-free phone number and our web address again. And we are here to help you, and we wish you an absolutely wonderful year. We'll be at the Magnolia Conference in September, and we'll be at MCA in November. So if you would like to meet us and come talk to us, we'd love to get a chance to interact with you at either of those conferences.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the update. Now we're going to go into the updates for federal student aids applications, so for the FAFSA. To begin with, we're going to see what the rankings are for Mississippi, where we are considered nationally. So Shannon, if you'll go to the next slide. As we all know, one of the things that we are very proud of in Mississippi is the fact that we as a group, all of us that are on here, the 60 of us, plus so many more, are very passionate around supporting Mississippi students in their applications for college, not only for admissions, but also, as we are all here, for that financial aid. And so National College Attainment Network is a national organization that supports college access organizations all across the country. And they have a FAFSA tracker called Form Your Future. It's a website that tracks states and overall where they rank in FAFSA completion for traditional high school seniors. They do have some renewal data there. They also do year over year, but they also can dig in to show where you are as a state year over year and the national ranking. So we are excited to share the update that as of this last data batch, which we know federal student data, which is what this is based off, is about 2 weeks delayed, but we're ranked 4th nationally. In the past few years, we've hovered around number 4, number 5. What you see on the screen is where we are as of this past Friday. We usually keep track through the end of August. So the last data set for the August 31st should be coming within the next week. So by this next Friday, we'll know where we have landed nationally. So 67.4% of Mississippi students have completed the FAFSA. Just a slight acknowledgement here is that Louisiana requires the FAFSA for graduation. They do have some waivers. Obviously, that's why they're not at 100%. But Tennessee, they require the FAFSA to be completed for their free community college, the Tennessee Promise Program. So the two states that are number 1 and number 2 and have been for the past few years have some sort of requirement aspect. As we know, Mississippi, we don't have that. Other states that are below us do have a requirement, such as Alabama, Illinois, Texas. So we as a state are doing really great. We were in the high 40s about that March 31st help grant deadline. So we've significantly increased. And if you'll hit the next, you can actually see where we are year over year in those checkpoints. So you can see that by that April 1st line, we as Mississippi in the orange actually exceeded the national FAFSA completion percentages by then going to 46.3% and then just went up from there. Mississippi, this is very traditional of how we track when it comes to FAFSA completion. If you're joining us from a college today, you know that a lot of students are showing up at your doorstep throughout the summer as school classes get closer and closer, needing to make sure their FAFSA is completed to get that federal aid. So just wanted to share that information and celebrate that with everyone. So then let's dig into the 23-24 FAFSA updates. The things we want you to remember, the FAFSA, it's just the free application for federal student aid. As a reminder, it's just an application. And so making sure that your students and your staff or your team know kind of those reminder pieces for successful FAFSA completion, that it opens on October 1st of every year. It uses prior tax information. So know that that is going to be the 2021 taxes, because it will be the 23-24 FAFSA covering fall semester 23, spring semester 23, or 24, summer semester 24. So it's the academic year is what we'll be doing it for. And just as a reminder on the FAFSA, it's only student information or student or biological and adoptive parent. And so those are the only two groups of people that you will provide information on the FAFSA for. And then always link to the MAAPP application from the confirmation page, as Jennifer mentioned. It helps save time and it pulls that information over. All right, so let's see what's going to be different. So removed from the 23-24 FAFSA are several questions. The selective service registration is no longer there. That is no longer required in order to receive federal aid. While it is still required for state aid and institutional aid, it will no longer be a question on the FAFSA. While previously it asked if the student identified as male, with the male-female question, if they had registered for selective service, that question will be removed, and no longer will they be able to register within the application for selective service. So it's just something to keep in mind, to still communicate with your students that the males still have to register in order to get other aid, but federal aid they no longer. Because that selective service question was removed, the male-female question has been removed as well within the demographic questions in the beginning. And then the drug conviction question, asking if the student has been convicted of the sale or possession of illegal drugs while receiving federal student aid, that has been removed as well from the FAFSA. And at the end of June, if any of you have tried to use it since, you'll notice that Federal Student Aid's mobile app is no longer in existence. It has had its last rites. And so it is no longer an option for students to utilize to complete their FAFSA application. Data from Federal Student Aid, so that it wasn't used terribly much. It was on the web app, is what most traditionally is used, is the most popular one. But just wanted to acknowledge that I know in years past, there's been issues with the application itself working, and you call 1-800 Federal Student Aid and their option was, hey, use the mobile app. Well, that no longer is an option. So we will be sharing troubleshooting if that's necessary as October 1 rolls around, but just know that the app is no longer an option there for that. Other things to note, new for the 23-24 age year for that FAFSA is multi-factor authentication. So this actually has already begun. As of July the 10th, all new FSA IDs have to establish that multi-factor authentication. It's actually, federal student aid has been mandated for a while to require this for anyone who logs into any federal site. President Biden is requiring there to be multi-factor authentication. As with probably a lot of different security sites that you may be familiar with, you have to have that secondary code that does that. Well, now federal student aid, studentaid.gov requires it. So just know that it's every single new FSA ID has this, and we're going to see what it looks like in just a second. But something to note is that beginning in November, there will be a phase 2 of this implementation, which is going to phase in at random existing FSA IDs over several different months. We don't have any of those specifics. So ultimately, really kind of by this time next year, everyone with an FSA ID, new or old, will have that multi-factor authentication feature. Know that if you're working in FSA IDs before November for students who already have them, if they change their password, that then puts them in the new FSA ID bucket. So then they will have multi-factor authentication. So just know that's kind of what's happening currently for new and changes to existing. And then starting November at random, you'll start seeing existing FSA IDs have this. So let's take a look and see what this looks like. So this is the very end of the FSA ID creation. screen, as you recall, you have to have either email or cell phone or both ideally, where you do that verification. And so the next screen you'll see when you send that text code over, Shannon, if you'll, yeah, that's you'll input that text code that links this text cell phone number to that FSA ID. So you'll input that there. Then you'll go back to that screen where you'll do the email verification if you've included an email address. So you'll go to the next screen and you'll input that code. So that you'll come over. And as a reminder, ceasefire tends to have a lot of trouble receiving the text code. So if you get to this point and you're awkwardly waiting beyond that time period, you can always go back where you can see previous at the bottom and remove the cell phone if maybe that's an issue. But if you're in the high school, remember the student and parent have to have access to whichever one that you input with that immediate. All right, so here's the new change is that multi-factor authentication. So if you'll hit the continue button, once you've verified both of those, this will pop up and this will show about setting up the app. So there are really three options. As you can see, this is screenshots directly from federal student aid, and they do let you know that the Authenticator app is optional. Okay, that this is something that students can choose to download or utilize if they already have an Authenticator app. But the other options, if you'll hit the next button, Shannon, this will be to be able to do cell phone or email text as a second factor there. So there's three ways to do multi-factor authentication and what you see on the screen. You can either download an app or have the students do a cell phone or email. Just like they did that code, as you just saw, it'll be very similar to that. But instead of it being one time at the creation of the FSA ID, it will be every time they log into studentaid.gov. Before they even get to the page to start the FAFSA, this is the step that they have to do is choose that. All right, if you hit the next button, so then there is provided a backup code. Let's take a second and talk about this backup code. Currently, the backup code that you see on the screen, you'll see it for each time you create an FSA ID. It is a one-time get out of jail free code. It can only be used once to log into the studentaid.gov site. And so what this means is that you can write this down with your student. And if you're logging into studentaid.gov and the email has changed or the cell phone has changed or they don't have access to that, you can input this option in studentaid.gov as a multi-factor, but it can only be used once. So once you use it, it is null and void. I do know that starting in November, federal student aid has said, so we'll see what this actually looks like, has said that they will do a unlimited backup code option. So just know that until November, this code is just really one time. We'll share out once we hear more about what the unlimited backup code looks like. But I just wanted to talk about what this code means in that two-factor verification, multi-factor authentication. All right, so then this is the page that is the final now, and it gives you that reminder code when you create that FSA ID. So let's see what it looks like when you log into the FAFSA now with this multi-factor authentication. So you've got your FSA ID that you put in, no changes here. But then it's immediately going to go to this screen. And it's going to give you the ability to either do the app, the Authenticator app, and enter the code, or send email or text for that code. And this is every single time you log into studentaid.gov. So it's not just a do it once and it's verified. It is every single time. So just know that you're going to have to get pretty familiar with this. One note also is that you no longer will be able to be in the FAFSA and change your FSA ID. You're going to have to make it a best practice to start by checking the information in the FSA ID if that FSA ID was already created. So maybe it's been done in a college and career readiness class and you're sitting down and helping a student complete their FAFSA. first step is you need to make sure that that cell phone and email are ones that the student has immediate access to that time so that they can get past this page of that multi-factor authentication. So you're probably going to have to change your practices with those with the existing FSA IDs to check that first, and then be able to log in to get to that FAFSA selection page. So you can see this is what it looks like, whichever one that you so choose of the multi-factor, either the text or email or the authenticator app code. So it looks very similar to when the creation is. You put that code in for each time. You just choose one of the three. And then you get to the am continuing on to the federal site, and you accept those so that multi-factor happens first. All right, so if you are utilizing that backup code, what it looks like is that same, you hit the FSA ID login, and you'll see at the bottom it has help me access my account if they don't have the authenticator app, or their cell phone doesn't have service and they can't get a text, or their email doesn't happen. Then you can select that where you can see highlighted in the red. And then at that point, it's going to ask you to enter that backup code from hopefully when been saved when they created their FSA ID. And again, remember, it's just a one-time code, so they can only do this once. This is their get out of jail free card up until November, and more info coming at some point around that. And then once they do that, they'll put in that unique code to them, hit continue, and then they have to answer 2 of their challenge questions from their FSA ID here, which is always fun. I know that we always enjoy that process. And so once they do that, then they can get in, and then they need to update their FSA ID like ASAP with info to give them an alternative. Okay, so also new for the 23-24 FAFSA is there's been a slight reordering to the login page. And so I have some screenshots to show you what that looks like. So when you go to the roles page on studentaid.gov with the FAFSA, you would choose, students would choose I'm a student and want to access the FAFSA form. And when they do that, it asks for their login. Well, according to their screenshots that were released last week from Federal Student Aid, it actually will ask for their information first and then their FSA ID. So next one, yeah. So it'll ask for their personal identifiers, and then it will ask for their FSA ID. So when they hit continue, then it will go into the FSA ID page, and then it will go into that multi-factor authentication that we just saw. Okay, to even get to this page right here to select. And also Federal Student Aid is monitoring the points of which are barriers, but they have no way to know if it's a barrier to even get to this page. They don't consider a FAFSA having been started until they click that, start 23-24 FAFSA form. So that multi-factor has to happen before they can even get here, which we'll see how that goes with everyone. So just know that that's a pretty significant change that has occurred, and just didn't want to surprise everybody. One more thing to highlight here that you will see is very different and will be something that you'll just want to kind of prepare on how to navigate with students is the student demographic survey. It is required to submit an answer for each one of the questions. You can't skip any of them, but they do have the do not want to answer option for each one. It is located at the end of the FAFSA after the summary page, but before the agreeing to terms and conditions and submit. So you're like, what are these demographic questions? Well, let me show you. The next slide has them. They're a little small, so I'm going to read them to you. It asks, it discloses at the top that it does not affect their eligibility for aid. This is a part of the Simplification Act that they had some of the questions they had to collect with the Future Act. Some of these are just information that Federal Student Aid is curious about. So the questions are, what is your gender? The options are male, female, non-binary, decline to answer. The second question is, are you transgender? The answer options are yes, no, decline to answer. The third question is, what is your ethnicity? Choose all that apply. And the fourth question is, what is your race? Choose all that apply. Again, each one of them have to be answered. You can't skip them, but they do give you the option decline to answer for the student. So this will be after the summary page, but before the signature page, and every student has to answer them. So just wanted to put that out there and show you all before you get into the FAFSA, so you're not surprised on those questions. All right, so we cannot talk about the FAFSA upcoming without talking about the simplification that's coming. If you haven't heard about it, the FAFSA is drastically changing next year for the 24-25 application. It started with the Future Act in December of 2019, and it is at this point estimated that the FAFSA will become about 68 lines on the new FAFSA. Currently, there are over 100, and so know that there may be several questions within a line, such as like name, first and last, but generally about 68 lines. That's the last that I heard. And there's going to be a significant reordering and just shakeup of all of that. And so we're going to talk about briefly in our last couple of minutes here what that means. So it's important to know who it applies to. So the class of 2022 that just graduated, if they're completing a bachelor's degree, they will have a part of their college experience, the simplified FAFSA, and there are rules that are drastically changing around that. So it's important to know. The class of 23, if they're doing an associate's or beyond, it affects them. And then class of 24, any high school graduates. So if you've got a student in class of 22 that's doing a 2-year degree, it won't affect them, but it will be for those that are doing a 4-year degree or are in school for the next 3 years. So let's kind of see, there are 5 major things that you need to know when talking to your students around this, because this is your juniors that this is affecting. While your seniors will have it, as we talked about, if they're doing anything beyond a 1-year certificate, it will affect them. But it's important to kind of mention in the FAFSA appointments now that you're meeting with students around what these changes may be. So the first major change that you need to know is that EFC, expected family contribution, will no longer exist with the simplified FAFSA. It will become the student aid index. The student aid index will actually be a range from negative 1,500 and up. While the EFC currently is 0 as the lowest, SAI will be a negative number. The reasoning behind that is they want to break up the cluster of artificial EFC, 0 EFCs. So only individuals who do not require to file taxes will have a negative SAI. So only those that have absolutely no income will have a negative 1,500 student aid index. There will still be a 0 SAI, those that file taxes and have income but don't have enough to, it will still equal a 0, but there will be a negative 1,500 there. The next thing that you need to know is the number in college no longer affects the FAFSA formula, so SAI. So currently, if you have 2 students in college, it splits your EFC in half, and that may be allowing some families to receive from some Pell Grant. But moving forward in the 24-25 age year, that is no longer going to be the case. So the SAI is going to be based off of household size, the AGI, and the poverty tables for 2021. There is going to still be a question on the FAFSA that asks about number in college, but it is only purely for federal student aids knowledge and not at all for the formula. One thing to note about household size, so when the simplified FAFSA takes effect, everything will be answered from the IRS. Like 98% of everything will be answered from the IRS, and that includes transferring over household size based off of the tax form. But we know that that may not be accurate, and sometimes that student may not even be claimed by the parent in the household for that tax year of who they live with because of maybe divorce agreements. And so there's going to be a manual option to confirm household size even after it pulls over from the IRS. So we'll want to make it best practice to always do the manual confirmation there. All right, the next thing that you need to know is businesses and farms will be assets. And so this is regardless of the primary residency. Right now, businesses and farms are protected if they have under 100 employees, and also if their primary residence is on their farm. No longer will this be applicable for the 24-25 FAFSA. It's important to know it will be the net value of those businesses or farms, regardless if they're under an LLC or things like that. And also something to note here is that with the changes in assets, child support is actually going to be considered an asset with the new FAFSA. And one thing you'll hear about in the simplification is change of language. And so another acronym change that we'll have around this is the simplified needs test that's currently in existence that skips some of those asset questions. It will no longer be considered that. The wording is now going to be exempt from asset reporting. So EAR is what that will be. All right, so the fourth thing that you need to know is that FSA IDs will have to be confirmed before they're used. And this is really a key one to pay attention to, because if you've been used to creating an FSA ID or assisting a student in creating it, and then immediately starting the FAFSA, you will no longer be able to do that with the new FAFSA. The reason being is that the FSA ID, as we know it does now, runs through several different major federal departments, such as Social Security Administration, Homeland Security, and several others, just to match that. With the IRS data retrieval being the FAFSA pretty much moving forward, you're going to have a confirmed FSA ID before you're able to do that. And so it's going to take 2 weeks or more for that confirmation of the FSA ID before you can log in and do anything on the FAFSA, because the new FAFSA format will be literally you log in and immediately give permission to pull from the IRS. And so it's going to require that FSA ID to be validated in order to do that. It will require everyone to have an FSA ID, regardless if they're undocumented, because the IRS will be able to pull over non-tax filers, tax filers, but then also federal student aid is going to be requiring some sort of way for undocumented parents to validate that in a unique FSA of some capacity. That has not been defined yet, but just know everyone will have to have it. The new order of the FAFSA is tentative to be, just as I mentioned, you'll give immediate approval to pull that IRS information over. There'll be demographic questions, gender, race questions, which are required from the Future Act, dependency questions, state residency, grade, college, parent education, student financials, and then you'll log out. And then you'll log in almost like it's its own FAFSA for parent, and parent will do their financial information, you'll log out, and then you'll have to do assets and submit under the student. So it's really going to be shaking everything up. All right, the last thing that I want you to know is that there's going to be a minimum and maximum Pell Grant. And so there's kind of the logic for eligibility here is in 3 buckets. The first is based off of the poverty tables and AGI and family size, eligible for maximum Pell Grants. It's part of kind of the early awareness, because SAI has taken that household size and AGI and poverty table into consideration there. The second bucket is a student qualifies for Pell based on just what their SAI is. And then the third is does a student qualify for non-Pell based on AGI and family size? So minimum Pell helps the family know based on charts and some of that early awareness conversation that's required by the simplified FAFSA from federal student aid. So know that there's going to be conversation about minimum maximum Pell, and federal student aid actually says that about 500,000 more individuals will be eligible for some sort of Pell Grant with the expansion. So more information to come around this. We'll start heavily training around it in the spring of next year, but wanted to put on all of your radar what some of those changes to look out for are.
All right, so thank you, Jennifer and Kirsten, for all your great knowledge around the MAAPP application and the FAFSA application. If you have any questions, we can go ahead and drop those in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll be looking for those to happen. If anything, if y'all have questions about any information that was provided here, and we hope that y'all found this presentation helpful as you make plans to help your students complete the FAFSA and MAAPP applications coming up very shortly. October 1 will be here before we know it. We will email you all a recording for this webinar in the next couple of days, and we will also post it on our YouTube channel. We would appreciate it if you would complete the short survey that will automatically pop up at the end of this meeting. Please fill this out and give us any feedback on today's webinar, because we always want to keep improving and giving you all the information that you need. So I'm seeing some questions pop up here. Let me see what we've got going.
I can answer you can create, there's no requesting of an FSA ID. You create it. It's a creation process that the individual student and parent has to create, and you can do it before October 1. You just need to make sure that the student and parent maintains accuracy of email and cell phone. Because of that, now multi-factor authentication, it has to be the current. So I saw that question came through. Verify that the question for the demographic survey. Yes, it will be on 23-24. So you will be answering those demographic questions, the gender, the transgender, the ethnicity, and the race, beginning on October 1 for all the FAFSAs. And
then somebody asked, you're walking through, thinking ahead, I would like to start this year and walking through setting up FSA ID small groups in a time in preparation for October. Am I able to start that now?
yes, you can, but I just would really, really encourage you to work on making sure that username and that email and cell phone are accurate, and that they have immediate access if you do anything beforehand, because you'll need to make sure that they can get that email or text code. So just making sure, I know sometimes cell phone and email numbers change. So if you do it, just make sure that you are sharing that information, that they have to have that same access to it. And as a reminder for your email, don't use school emails. If you're working with high school students, don't use their email at, Hancock High School. Use the email that's their Gmail, because they'll need it every year moving forward to have access to it. And sometimes those high school emails don't transcend. And then our community colleges get to college staff helping with FAFSA days and nights this year. So you can reach out to your local community college. We actually have a meeting with a lot of the financial aid directors this week to kind of talk about these changes and how to support. We would love to come in and support your team creating a FAFSA team in your school. We've done that. We know that the college and career readiness class is just such an instrumental part in talking about financial aid and the FAFSA and things like that. And so we would love to see supports around that, whether that's creating a team of your teachers or your counselors. And so Get to College is not traveling across the state as much as we were, just because the manpower and woman power and person power that it takes for those, we are going through a strategic planning process and just don't have that at the moment. And so we want to empower utilizing those that are working with the students day in and day out to really support that. So long answer, short question.
All right, I don't think I see any new ones, Kirsten. So if not, we'll go ahead and move on. For time's sake, if y'all have any other questions, of course, y'all know where to find us, and we'll be glad to answer those questions by email or phone. So the next thing that we wanted to focus on was our next Topic Tuesday. So stay tuned for our next Topic Tuesday webinar, which will be Tuesday, October the 4th. During that webinar, we will be discussing how we can help early high school graduates with the college enrollment process, so those who leave high school early. We will continue this webinar series throughout the fall and spring semester. If you participate in 5 webinars, you will have the opportunity to apply for 0.5 CEUs. And if you participate in all 10 webinars over the fall and spring semesters, you will have the opportunity to apply for 1 full CEU. These remaining webinars for the fall semester will include topics such as the basics of successful grant writing for educators and supporting students with disability in the college access process. You can register for these webinars on our Get to College website. They are listed under the Educator tab, and then choose Professional Development. While you're there registering, please check out all the other resources that are there for you and your students listed under that training, that Educator tab. So we've got a few other training opportunities that are coming up. Our CCR teacher chats happen every month. So we've got one coming up in September, October, and November, and those are all 3:30 to 4:15 p.m. virtually. We've got a couple of in-person FAFSA trainings. I know one of the questions was about supporting your students in the FAFSA process. So we have an in-person training in North Mississippi Center, one at the Gulf Coast Center, and one in Jackson. Those are all in person. And then Kirsten and I will also conduct a virtual FAFSA training on September 27th. So we hope you'll join us for one of those so you can support your students. And then outside of the center, we'll be doing an in-person training at ICC Conference Center in Belden, in Greenville, and then also in the Hattiesburg area, and then another virtual one on November 23rd. So lots of opportunities to get that FAFSA training in so that you can help your students. And lastly, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at gettocollege.org or any of the social media handles that you see. Thanks so much, and we look forward to seeing you all in October for the next Topic Tuesday.